King Lear is old and wants to give the crown to his 3 daughters. In order to divide his kingdom, he asks them how much they love him, and plans to give the largest piece to the one who loves him most. GONERIL, the eldest, is married to the Duke of Albany and gives a big speech about how she loves her father more than anything else in the world. Lear is pleased and gives her a big piece of the kingdom. Regan, the second daughter, married to Cornwall, goes even further and says she doesn't love anything in the world except her father, and Lear is delighted and gives Regan another third. And when he asks his favorite daughter, the young Cordelia, what she can possibly say to get a larger share than her sisters, she says nothing. She refuses to play his flattery game and calls out her sisters for their exaggerated praise. Lear is first hurt and then furious at Cordelia, certain she does not love him, and disowns her. Kent, his most loyal adviser, asks Lear to reconsider his actions, but Lear banishes him. There are 2 suitors in court to ask for Cordelia's hand in marriage, the Duke of Burgundy and the King of France, and when Burgundy finds that Cordelia is now penniless, he takes back his proposal, but the King of France says she is herself a dower, and only loves her more for her honesty. So Cordelia goes to France, and Lear tells his remaining 2 daughters that he will live with them each in turn, along with 100 knights. Gloucester is another father with conflict between his children. His son Edgar is good and faithful, but his illegitimate son Edmund is crafty and fed up with the jokes and the fact that he won't inherit his father's land or goods, so he begins telling lies. He convinces both his brother and his father that the other wants to kill him, so Gloucester chases Edgar, and Edgar runs away, takes off his clothes, and pretends to be Tom o' Bedlam, a lunatic who runs naked through the woods. Kent, the banished nobleman, disguises himself as a servant and follows Lear to Goneril's house. There, Lear's fool is making very dark and sarcastic jokes about what a fool Lear has been to give away his crown and to have banished the one child who truly loves him. Goneril is soon tired of having 100 of her father's drunken men around her house and asks him to consider the nuisance an expense to her and keep only 50 instead. Lear is outraged at this demand and so bewildered at his daughter's disrespect for his status, he questions his own identity, disowns her, curses her, and takes his 100 knights to Regan. When Lear arrives, Goneril is close behind, and Regan takes Goneril's side, says that if he thinks she's offended him, it's only because he's old and cannot think clearly. Regan says she's not prepared to have any visitors yet, and since he's come unexpected, he can only bring 25 men. Lear is shocked and says he'll go with Goneril after all, but when the 2 sisters insist, they have servants to serve him. He needn't have any men of his own, undercutting his authority and claiming he is too senile to command. Lear's anger breaks open as a storm begins outside, and he goes out into it, leaving both his daughters behind, his fool and Kent following him. He yells his rage and grief into the storm. They find shelter with Edgar, still pretending to be poor Tom, who rambles incoherent nonsense the whole time. Lear is convinced that Tom is also insane from fatherly grief. Lear's sanity, not strong before now, grows weaker in this wild weather. Gloucester hears that Goneril and Regan are plotting to kill their father and tries to help connect Lear with the French army under Cordelia's leadership, but Edmund betrays his plan to Regan and to her husband, the fiery Cornwall. They pluck out Gloucester's eyes as punishment. A servant tries to stop Cornwall, and both end up dead. Gloucester, blinded and bleeding, calls for Edmund, only to learn that his beloved son turned him over to this violence, and that Edgar was the faithful son all along. Edgar finds his blinded father wandering outdoors and is heartbroken to see him so abused, and prevents Gloucester from killing himself. Cordelia is likewise heartbroken to hear the story of her father, madly wandering without shelter from the storm, and sends her men to go find him and bring him where doctors can care for him. Gloucester and a flower-crowned Lear find each other, Lear in his madness finally wise, and Gloucester blinded but seeing his sons truthfully for the first time. Cordelia's servants find them and bring Lear to her camp. Lear wakes to music, finds his daughter Cordelia has forgiven every cause for hatred, and loves him still. Meanwhile, Goneril and Regan's army is gathering force along with Edmund, with whom both evil sisters are attempting to have an affair, and they beat Cordelia's army, so Cordelia and Lear are taken prisoner. But Lear is content with life in prison, if his loving Cordelia is at his side. Albany, Goneril's husband, has been more and more dismayed by Goneril's viciousness throughout the play, and leaves the rebellion to fight on Lear's behalf. Goneril poisons Regan. Edgar and Edmund finally duel, and Edmund is mortally wounded. Goneril kills herself in grief over Edmund, but as he is dying, he has a change of heart and confesses he's given an order to execute Lear and Cordelia. Edgar runs to stop it, but he is too late. Lear enters with Cordelia dead in his arms, howling his grief, and dies.